Welcome to the craziest and wildest AITA Reddit stories. From explosive family drama to shocking twists, these jaw-dropping tales will keep you hooked, questioning who's truly in the wrong. The first story for the collection is from Electronic Zombie 1994. AITA for telling my husband his friend can't come to our house? My 38F husband, 45M, has a lifelong friend. This friend royally screwed us over financially. He tricked my husband into quitting his good-paying job, packing up our stuff, and moving with the promise that he could make money working for him. My husband did the work over a period of months and never got paid. His friend kept all of their earnings, while my husband quite literally did all of the work and even paid for some of the materials. Plus, used some of his own personal materials. Meanwhile, I had to work a fast food job to keep our bills paid. I'm not above that, but I have an extensive administrative background with high-paying jobs. But none of these jobs existed in this tiny town, so that's what I was stuck with. We eventually found out that this friend owed a lot of people money, employees, friends, family. He basically lives off other people's money and labor, including his own wife, whose paycheck gets direct deposited into his account, and she would complain to me that she doesn't even have gas money. When people started chasing my husband for money, since he was now the face of the business, asking where his friend was, including the IRS, it became embarrassing and we finally moved away. Husband and I reconciled amazingly. It was a tough time for me, and I was often blamed for the situation, and even gaslit by his friend who told me I was fat, ugly, greedy, and didn't understand how business worked. My husband only insisted on staying for so long because he wanted to live closer to his children from a previous marriage, who happened to live there. So I understood his point of view and forgive him for putting us through that. Anyways, 5 years passed after this and we never heard from the friend. Husband and I rebuilt our life and now run a successful business and also purchased a house. Guess I do know how business works after all, huh? I was over it, at least until this friend creeped back into his life recently. He said he was getting kicked out of his living space, made up some elaborate story, which I am positive is bullshit. And I think that really, he was just in search of some place to go. And maybe he thought he could get something out of my husband. My husband, thankfully, is not helping him there, but he wants to give him another chance to be friends. He wants to invite him to our house, have our children play together, and I'm left feeling like I have to relive this nightmare all over again. I want nothing to do with this person, and I absolutely cannot allow this person into my home or near my children. I don't even trust him not to physically steal things from our home. My husband is now blaming me for interfering with his friendship, since I won't let him at the house. I said, maybe you should blame your friend for his behavior, or get better friends. I didn't pick him, and he makes me uncomfortable. It's just too bad IMO. But here I am being accused of being the bad guy. Deja vu of what that put us through all those years ago. AITA for wanting nothing to do with this person, and making my husband's friendship difficult by not allowing him to come over. TL, DR, husband's friend screwed us financially, disrespected me, and now my husband wants to invite him over after several years. AITA for not wanting the friend in our home. Edit. Just wanted to add, since a lot of people had concerns, my husband is in no way allowing this person to go into business with us or make any kind of business dealings. We've already discussed and both agreed on this. As for our finances, I have full access to all of it. My name is on everything, and my husband isn't savvy enough to siphon money in the way some of you are thinking. Not to mention, he simply wouldn't do that. He has a friend and made a dumb decision. He's not some monster who's going to steal money out of our bank account. Edit #2. Please stop telling me I need to blame my husband for what happened. I already do. Edit #3. Just wanted to mention, the friend has not, at this point, stepped foot on our property. Some of you seem to think he comes over or is staying here. He messaged my husband almost a year ago when he was getting kicked out of his place. He's living somewhere else now, and messages my husband just every few months or so. He messaged him the other day again, and that's why I decided to bring it up. OP is not an AH for standing up to protect her family's stability and peace from her husband's so-called friend, who betrayed them both emotionally and financially in the past, and ruined their reputation. OP's husband's desire to reconnect is unreasonable. As for scores, I would rate OP 0, and her husband's friend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump onto the next story. From No-Platypus, 1486. AITA for refusing to go on a family trip from which my partner was abruptly uninvited? For the last 8 or 9 months, I, 28F, and my partner, 30M of 3 years, have been under the impression that we were both invited on a 2-week trip to my family's country of origin that will happen this coming June. My mother, who traveled there with my youngest sibling, 16, in summer, 23, at the invitation of my sibling's friend's family, who are also from this country, pitched the idea of the trip to my siblings and me around January 2024, and said she also hoped her sister and brother-in-law, my aunt and uncle, and their children would want to come. When my mom first mentioned the trip to me, I asked if my partner could also come. She said yes, and since then she has talked about it to both of us, in front of him at least a few times. We have been saving up and recently found neighbors to watch our dog. About 4 or 5 months ago, my aunt and uncle also decided to come on the trip. My mom and aunt are very close, and my aunt and uncle have been extraordinarily generous with our family in the past, helping my mom, and by extension my siblings and me, through a long period of financial difficulty following my parents' divorce. 2 weeks ago, I received an email from my aunt about the trip, saying the invitation was not being extended to either my partner or my cousin's partner, who, as far as I know, had never planned on coming on the trip in the first place. They have only attended 2 family holidays in the near decade that my cousin has been dating them. My partner, on the other hand, is much more integrated into my family and comes to my younger siblings' recitals and graduations, our family dinners, etc. I was confused, because the way the email was written did not acknowledge that my partner had been invited on the trip from the get-go, months before my aunt and uncle decided to come. I wrote back expressing that my mom had originally made it seem my partner would be welcome, and that I thought it would be incredibly hurtful to my partner to revoke his invitation, and that it would feel like our family was rejecting him. I also mentioned that we were planning not only to pay for our own expenses, but to contribute to the overall family fund for the trip to help cover expenses for others as well. My aunt wrote back saying that now that she and my uncle are on the trip, it is a completely different trip, and the old trip no longer exists. She said that having my partner along would change the family dynamic, and that they want it to be just our family. I wrote back asserting that to me, my partner is family too. We've been together for 3 years, have lived together for 2, and own a house and 3 animals together. We are also planning to get married after he finishes school this spring. I said I wouldn't feel right about coming on the trip if he is no longer invited. The tenor of my aunt's emails became angrier, and she insisted that since he and I are not currently married, my partner doesn't count as part of our family. I offered that we could go to a courthouse and get married before June, if that would make them more comfortable and willing to have him along on the trip. And she wrote back that I was being ridiculous and impulsive, and that I needed to consider whether being with him was making me a better or worse person. She also told me that I need to stop putting my family second and think about their needs too. I emailed her back offering the compromise that if my partner came, he could give us some days to do activities and have meals together just as an immediate family, and go off and explore on his own. She did not accept this compromise and still said the dynamic will be affected. All this time, there was also no word from my mom, either to me or to my partner. She finally emailed me this past weekend, saying that while she feels badly to my partner, I need to think about what my aunt and uncle want as well, since this trip back to our country of origin is so huge for them, and neither of them has been back in over 40 years. She then said that our family has done so much for my partner, and that he should show love and graciousness to them by telling me to go without him. For the record, my partner has told me to go without him because he thinks the way my aunt is treating me is abusive, and he doesn't want me to have to continue going through all this stress. For me, this is a hill I am willing to die on, because I feel that them putting me in this position is incredibly insulting to both my partner and to me. The additional context of all of this is that my mom has a history of acting out whenever I have had a serious relationship. The worst was in summer 2021, when she essentially kicked me out of her house because she was offended that I asked if we could reschedule a family game night so I could see my then boyfriend when he came through town. She said things like, "I hate your guts," and told me I was a harm to my brothers, and that it would be better for everyone if I left. She was then so angry when I did get an apartment of my own and move out that she barely spoke to me for months. Things have been better between us recently though. I am worried that I am the asshole here because I am being so inflexible about the fact that their plans changed and haven't been willing to accept the notion that this is a whole different trip now that my aunt and uncle are coming. I do get, at least intellectually, the desire for an immediate family-only trip back to our country of origin. But I just don't think you can invite someone and then disinvite them, especially someone's partner. My family seems to think that this is okay to do, given the importance of the trip to our immediate family, and the fact that my aunt and uncle have both worked incredibly hard and always been incredibly generous with my mom and siblings and me, helping us through a lot of financial difficulty. My aunt also told me not to tell my cousins what happened, which pissed me off because it made me think they were going to lie about why I wasn't coming on the trip. So I forwarded the whole email exchange to my cousins and my siblings. In the past, when my mom has gotten angry at me, she has presented an inaccurate picture of me to my siblings and aunt. Forwarding the email against my aunt's wishes might also make me the asshole. I have only heard sporadically from a couple of my siblings in response to some of my messages to them. And that's it. No one has reached out. TLDR. My family initially invited my partner of 3 years on a trip back to our country of origin. They have now suddenly uninvited him because of the way they think having him there will affect the family dynamic. We were going to not only pay our own way, but help cover overall expenses for the family as well. And my partner even offered to give the family time to ourselves on the trip. Family still won't budge, and since I am not going, are treating me as though I have done something terribly wrong. AITA. OP is not an AH for standing up for her partner. It is unfair on the part of OP's family to abruptly uninvite her long-term partner after initially inviting him. It is really humiliating and dismissive of their relationship, which also disregarded their months of planning and savings. Money should not be the problem here. The real issue is that OP's family doesn't consider OP's partner a part of the family. I would suggest that OP not compromise and instead refuse to attend the event. If your family doesn't respect your partner, it means they also don't respect you. The best option is to decline the trip. In terms of scores, OP's aunt is an AH and deserves at least a 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, while OP is not at fault. Let's now jump onto the next story from Ornery Bookkeeper 8115. AITA for refusing to go to confession so I can take communion in my brother's wedding. I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40M, 38F, 27M, and we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married, and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother, Luke, is engaged to his GF of a year, Emma, 28F. She is nice, I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something important is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke, and it has always been a sibling joke that I am truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her, she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I am just polite and civil, always include her when planning stuff, but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it, but we just shrugged it to different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be in the wedding party since I was not married in a church. Fine by me. Then she requested that immediate family submits their dress plannings so she could check it, fits the wedding dress code. Fine, whatever. You see where this is going, I hope? You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason, I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate on. Well, this is not good enough for her, and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no, and she has not taken it well. For the most part, I avoid her as I said before, but this time I wasn't going to say yes or risk an issue. I told her for taking communion, one needs to go to confession, and I didn't want to. She said all immediate family is doing it. And it will look bad if I don't, I told her. Sure, fine. Then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody, but won't do confession. She said if this was going to be my attitude, I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him, thanks, gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understand my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't have said what I said. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore, and I don't owe Emma explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it, and she is fine with me now. I got a text from my brother wanting to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made to take confession too. He said no, because it was only nuclear family members. I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her, and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. AITA? Update. Things have moved, but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise, but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young, but not like a teen or a child, obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses, her being very my way or the highway with younger people, so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday, and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship. As in, they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother, Robert, is very no-nonsense, and he has never been a fan of Emma, but he didn't think he should have to intervene. Because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships, all this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit Grandma a lot since she lives by herself, and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is over this drama already. After a lunch, that was more like snacking to be honest, she asked us all to clear the air. Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person, and that she was asking the bare minimum from me. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking communion. And Emma said that she was her elder, and for sure her reasons were more than a tantrum like it was in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings, and I was the only one that was being difficult with her tiny request. This is where everything crumbled for her. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and he was already exhausted by this situation. He asked her why she had no issues with him not taking communion, and she looked like a kid that was caught. She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew why he and Grandma became lapsed. She shook her head and looked at Luke for help. Luke, on the other hand, was staring angrily at Robert and I, but said nothing. Robert explained to Emma he was the reason Grandma became lapsed. When Robert was a teen, he came out as gay, and was so worried about our grandparents' reaction since they were very active in the Catholic Church. Grandma felt awful about it, and even worse when she went and spoke about this with the then priest of her church. That priest was super old school and told her that Robert was committing sins, he was going to hell, he needed to find his way. The whole 9 yards. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years, she started getting into the whole community again, but she decided she was done taking the sacraments. She respects parts of the church but can't fully reconcile with it. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman, and he explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have ended with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession. But it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person, and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. More was said, nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again, but declined, going, Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh, and yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent, and my grandma loved the Pope joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry, and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama. But now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called her to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened, and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild, and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believe this, and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ+ members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out by the way, doubted if she would do it for them. So, Grandma explained to Luke and then call every single one of her grandchildren to ask them how they felt and explain to each a part we didn't know. She said that when Robert came out and she spoke with the old priest, he hinted about knowing of places to set Robert straight. Grandma had heard horror stories from this place, and so had Robert, and they both spoke with my parents together about that not being an option at all. My parents never intended to send Robert there and are very casual Catholics, but Grandma wanted to cover the bases just in case. I was told Grandma sounded like she had been crying on the phone, and after the first couple of calls, which went from oldest to youngest, the group chat started to blow. Robert is livid, our LGBTQ+ cousins are livid, and say Luke lied. Even the cousins that were telling me to stop being a stubborn head are livid. By the time I was up for my call, I was already on the way to Grandma's. 2 of my cousins were already there, and the youngest one, Sarah, 16F, was ready to literally fight Luke. For a bit of levity, Sarah is about 35 centimeters smaller than Luke, and the image of her swinging at him made me laugh a bit. She asked if I was making fun of her, and I just explained the whole mental image of her trying to hit him, and she admitted it was kind of funny. What I didn't tell her is I would love to slap some sense into Luke. My grandma has been through so much in her life, and this is not what we want for her. She looks puffy-faced and kept asking everybody if they truly felt unloved by her, saying she would do everything for any of us, explaining how Robert was the oldest grandchild, but that didn't mean she loved the rest any less. She is a strong woman, but I think something inside her broke a little with the thought she hurt her grandchildren. It was a big one, and I was just so done with Luke. My parents have been passive towards the situation so far because I asked them to, but after they heard what happened, they told him they need time away from him. Robert is simply disgusted and decided to not speak with him anymore, which he communicated through the cousin group chat, with Luke's response being that this is why Emma's help on reining all us would be so beneficial if we just let her. He also added how Robert never cared for him or anybody really, and he just tried to be the center of attention all the time. He cited his coming out, his announcement he was going to marry a woman, the birth of his child. It was ridiculous. He came out when Luke was a toddler, and for many years, only our parents and grandparents knew. He announced he was going to marry his now wife through a text, but didn't interfere or took from anybody. His child was born 4 months before Luke's graduation, and apparently that was a big issue for Luke that he never commented. Maybe I am biased, maybe I am selfish like Emma claims, but I call bullshit on his tantrum. Every single one of the cousins has been helped, babysat, tutored, gotten out of trouble, you name it, by Robert. He isn't perfect, but he isn't the conniving ass Luke is claiming. Maybe Luke has always felt inadequate, and we didn't notice. Maybe it was his last-ditch effort. Maybe Emma has manipulated him so far that he can't come back. It doesn't matter anymore. If he does marry Emma, I wish him the best. If he doesn't, I hope he goes to therapy. Regardless of what he decides, he burned so many bridges and hurt so many people. I don't see this resolving anytime soon. For now, I will focus on my grandma and making her feel better. I feel extremely guilty because it was Emma's situation with me that opened this can of worms. I know I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. Update 3. I want to start this by saying that Grandma is in better spirits now. I am overwhelmed by the amount of people supporting her and very grateful for it, even if it's online. I have talked about this on some chats and DMs, but please know the situation with Emma is not about her being parentified or her family being strict Catholics. It's just her being her. They were already going to get premarital counseling. An extra was added. Oh, all cousins also don't live in the same city or town. Some are a bit longer than others, but we keep in touch through the chat. The reason for the update is mainly to let people know Grandma is okay, her health is fine, and she had a blast with my cousin Sarah. I also want to update on what has happened with the cousins and the maternal side of our family. Some of our paternal cousins from Grandma's side have relented and feel a bit bad on excluding Luke from things, so the compromise was met on, he can be invited to everything, just don't force people to interact. These cousins are mainly on the older side and have soft spots for the youngsters. My youngest cousin Sarah said she was okay with it all, but she wanted them to keep him away from her since she can't stand him anymore. Our maternal side was a because of course we need one. Some of them were very upset, but others told me I should try to understand where he was coming from. My mom was the one that told them everything, and some told her she is at fault for making Robert the star of the family. This was so uncalled for, but brought some issues in my family, particularly when one of my maternal cousins asked me if I could behave enough if I am seated at the same table as Luke for his wedding. It makes us doubt ourselves, but really, this is a cousin that Robert has bailed from almost bankruptcy 2 times, and he's the problem? I haven't said much about my sister Lucy since she voiced nothing different before. She was always very close to Luke, and even had a great relationship with Emma before the debacle. She decided to be out of it because she was so disappointed. While she was never made to babysit or anything like that, she was always so into Luke since he was her baby brother. She loved him the most. And I know that because she literally told me when I was a kid. We have a good relationship now because her kids are my buddies, but it was rough for a while before that. She was upset about the whole thing. But when our maternal family, or at least a part, started excusing Luke, she lost it. She's a very calm person. The type you don't expect a bad word out of. But she lost it, and I think it was the last straw on the cold bucket for Luke. She sent a massive message about what has been happening, detailing every single thing, and daring people to kind of come at her if they disagreed. She made sure to include every single nasty thing, every bad word, every eye roll. She sent it to so many people because she was tired of the half-information telephone game. She is upset at me because my refusals made this happen, and she said she knows she shouldn't, but she needs time to fix her feelings, so she is not speaking with me right now. My parents decided they were out of the wedding and told Luke he is on his own. There was never a monetary issue. They were willing to contribute. But both Luke and Emma are pretty well off, and was no need for that. Now to what maybe most people want to know, and the only conflict I am interested about anymore. My grandma is feeling better. Sarah being with her was very positive. It was lovely to see the eldest and youngest of our family so in tune, but then again, they have always been. She requested that Sarah invited Luke to her birthday party, December, and after a lot of back and forward, he is going to be invited. We will see if he comes or not. A small parenthesis, I showed my grandma the joke of the knife, sword, etc. She was so giddy. Thank you. I mentioned before that Robert would pick up Sarah if she needed. It is still true. What I might have not mentioned is that she, of course, gets a weird lecture from him, and an even weirder lecture on how he rates certain drugs. LOL. As I said, he is no saint, but he is not a either. Lastly, yes, he has photos even with my sister or me in the newborn wall. People love to take pics of him holding the new family members, and he collected them and put them together when he got his own house. OP is not an AH for setting her boundaries of her personal beliefs and boundaries. Here, Emma is an AH for being demanding, disregarding OP personal beliefs. OP's standing her ground is reasonable and justified. So, I would rate Emma 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale and OP 0. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.